First, she's already on the screen. We have Miss King. Hi, Miss King. And she actually works for the USDA NRCS, correct? Oh, wait, APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Services. And she's actually in the Port of Wilmington. She's a 2019 graduate from our environmental science program here at Delaware State University. Um, and so next we have Miss Rochelle Purnell. She actually is at the top of the screen. Miss Purnell is actually a graduate of Delaware State University. Her undergrad was in agribusiness. She graduated 2015. And then she also did a master's at Virginia Tech in agriculture education, and she graduated in 2017. And now she's currently working on her doctorate as well. And it's in education or
It's
organizational
leadership.
leadership. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of getting you guys correct. Then we also have Jeremy Strickland. I know I saw that you came in, and
I'm
Jeremy
here.
is actually my classmate. We're not going to say the year, but Jeremy was wildlife, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember correct.
Animal science.
Animal science, okay. And then this part I do remember, he also went to Iowa State University. He's the first African American to earn a degree in evolutionary biology from Iowa State University. So I'm always proud of that and always bragging about that, especially when I was recruiting. So is there anybody else that I'm missing? I think that that's all. All right. So hopefully I gave you guys a good introduction. We'll just jump right into it. And um I'll ask, well, definitely Jeremy. So in short, how did you find out about your first job opportunity? And I say that because Jeremy is very humble, but Jeremy is extremely well at networking. So if you ever have gotten involved in the Manor Circle or anything else dealing with wildlife, if you mention his name, somebody's going to know him. So that's why I think that that's really important. Ardeen always talks about uh, your net worth. No, your network is worth your net worth. Well, between your network and your net worth, yeah, one of those two. One stronger because of the other. So, Jeremy, how did you find out about your first opportunity?
After college or just in general?
Directly after grad school.
Oh, directly after grad school. Well, I was fortunate conducting my graduate research on a national wildlife refuge that was in need of a biologist, but it came through that networking and networking skills, kind of what you talked about earlier, and just being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, uh, taking the best advantage of that research opportunity that was like an internship, and then not being afraid to step outside of my comfort zone because being from an urban area such as Chicago, it was a little daunting being asked to go out and live in a rural area in a more remote location. But the networking and then not being afraid to step outside the comfort zone and just being at the right place at the right time and having that elevator pitch with the right people.
So, essentially, networking helped you, and those were the significant steps. I do remember that Miss King had some of the exact same experiences as far as networking, your internship in Florida, and then making that linkage with your supervisor here in Delaware. Were there any other significant steps that you took, Miss King, to secure the position that you can remember? And also, your mic is off.
Let me see. Oh, it's not unmuting. Can you
Yep,
guys
we
hear
hear
me
you.
now?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. One thing that I don't share quite often, which I think I start sharing, I guess would be my drive and what consistency is. I can't write the exact word that I'm looking for. However, essentially, once I solidified my relationship with my now supervisor, the Spud of Delaware, Mr. Daryl Moore, he created a position for me. And there was a little bit of a hiccup in creating the position. So we were getting closer and closer to my graduation date, which means we were getting closer and closer to my potential start date. And the position had not been solidified, essentially. So at that point, I was talking to my supervisor, and I was like, look, is there any way that I could just continue my internship, and you can bring me on as an intern, and we once the position is solidified, then I'll just transfer over into a full-time employee. So actually, when I first started my program, my career, I was still an intern, and my supervisor was like, you know what, that's a wonderful idea. I could bring you on without, going through all the technicalities. And so when I initially started, I was just an intern. And then once the paperwork and everything came through, then I was able to transition on to being a full-time USDA employee. So I guess I would just say maybe being able to change your perspective and just being adaptive, being able to adapt to whatever situation in order to, get to where you want to be.
And I was going to say, like, that's really humbling, because a lot of times when you already have your brand new degree, you're expecting one thing, you should just go straight in. And how dare I go down to being an intern? Like, I got a 4-year degree.
Again.
So that's very humbling, and then also very promising that you were able to develop that relationship with your supervisor. Rochelle, I do remember that you went straight through. I remember that you did internships with the USDA when you were at Dell State. I remember that you got to Virginia Tech, you completed your master's, but I don't really remember the linkage in securing the position at North Carolina A&T.
So when I secured that position, you touched on it just a few minutes ago. Networking was the foundation to that. Excuse me. I actually had one of my peers from grad school at Virginia Tech was working at North Carolina A&T at that time, and she was just like, putting the word out there and telling them, you really need her. Like, she's going to be a great 4-H agent. Like, if you're looking for anybody that's good with kids that can do this kind of research and that can, change a program, like, this is the person. And so A&T actually ended up reaching out to me to see if I was interested in the position, and I was. So they had me to go ahead and submit my application and everything, and went through the traditional interview processes. But that was how I got that position, was networking.
Okay. So my thing is this, because I've had it as well, apprehensions. And I know through some of the other forums we had talked about that transition, because I remember Jordan was on it, and he talked about out talking every gentleman in the room to end up being their boss right on the spot. And that was a really good story to hear. But when we were going from employment, college to an actual employment setting, and we're talking about our first days on the job, can you, I know that you can remember your first day on the job, but what were some of the apprehensions that you might have had and how you overcame them? Jeremy.
Okay, I could keep it 100 here.
Yeah, there's no administrators in here.
Okay, cool. Well, again, being a city boy, going into a rural environment, there weren't a lot of people in that town or community that looked like me, for lack of better words. And we turn challenges into opportunities. But I'm going to say this: our maintenance crew uh, had assumed, since it was close to the end of the day, and I was an African American male from Chicago, that I automatically knew how to pick a lock on cars, because at the end of the day, they had accidentally locked their keys into the car, and they didn't want to call a locksmith because it would keep them around a little longer. So I showed up as they're wrapping up. I had a smiley face, and they was like, "Well, let's ask Jeremy if he can pick the locks. He's from Chicago. I'm sure he's stolen a few cars." And I was like, "Well, no, I bought everything I've owned, sir." So, and they were like, "Oh," so it kind of gave them a different perspective of me. But I kind of had to walk in to have thick skin. Don't take anything personal. You can't make everybody happy. You can't control what no one thinks of you. Just put your best foot forward and work hard, and be respectful, and just document everything. So I kind of was thrown to the wolves right off back, but you just can't take things personal.
So I was gonna also say one thing that we have to be mindful of is that um, somebody hired you, so you belong there, no matter what your peers are, your new colleagues might say. I know Rochelle and I have been a part of like I was a bridge to doctorate. Rochelle, you were on fellowship at Virginia Tech, and sometimes when you are on those programs, people assume that you're just there because you're getting funded and you're just a number. But no, I know I proved that I was talent worthy and that I could do the work. So make sure that that's gonna like that you always have that mindset, whether you're gonna go into graduate school or whether you're gonna go into employment. Somebody picked you and you're worthy enough to be there. And with that being said, Rochelle, did you Jeremy just said that he went into an environment where people did not look like him, but you were just the opposite. You went to a HBCU, if you will. Did you have any apprehensions with starting at A&T, even though you went to Del State?
I would say there was some apprehension there, and I say that there's apprehension there because despite the fact that I worked for an HBCU, cooperative extension, not everybody looks like us. And so that's a little bit of a different field, especially in North Carolina, where sometimes you're working with counties or with other individuals who don't look like you. And the perspectives sometimes can clash. Everybody doesn't always see eye to eye on how children's programs should look or what should be taught or how things should flow and should go. So there was some apprehension there, with just kind of perspective and what things would look like, because even though you know um, A&T and North Carolina State have a collaboration of their 4-H programming, a lot of the direction came from NC State, where there isn't anyone on the state level team that looks like me. And so that was kind of, like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work out kind of thing. But it works, you make it work. Like you said, somebody hired you. So you have a reason to be there. You're there for a reason, and, you just go in and make it happen and prove why you're there.
And how about you, Miss King? Because federal government is totally different.
Thankfully, well, I've had a multitude of different experiences. Thankfully, I do have a supervisor that I can relate to, I guess, to say the least. He's a DSU alum as well. And however, my first year working within USDA, I worked very closely with the Spotted Lanternfly program, and we were outside a lot, going to homeowners and like knocking on their door, asking for permission to have access to their property. And I had a previous internship in upstate New York, doing the same thing. And sometimes, as people that look like us, and someone is coming to knock on your door, they're like, even though I have on a USDA badge and a USDA hat and a USDA everything, no soliciting. I don't want you soliciting from me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, actually, I'm here on the behalf of the United States Department of Agriculture. And I've been asked, well, can I see your ID and so on and so forth. So because I've had that experience before as an intern, I just kind of know how to, adjust the situation. Even being outside surveying public property, having people come up like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Things like that. It always is, takes me back a little bit, but I just understand the climate that I work in, the climate that we live in, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches and, stand your ground. And
Yeah, and so I was going to say that definitely rolls back into that positive reinforcement of self. I know for myself, I'll never forget when I started in as recruiting. Um, of course, nobody looked like me. I made sure that students that worked in my office had a taste of it early on because I wanted you guys to develop thicker skin. And my mentor, who was on Dr. Kimrat Jefferson Moore, and that's why mentors are so important because they go before you so that they can give to you. And and I'll never forget, we were at a conference and a guy had made a really big deal about me coming in to eat with everybody because it was my first time bringing students. I did not know what my schedule was going to look like. And and I didn't know that my mentor was going to be there. So when we both got there, Rochelle already knows, when I got there, uh, I was like, I told her, I was like, well, I didn't reserve. I was like, it's probably not good to go. She's like, no, you're going to come. So we get there and the guy starts making a big deal. And he starts saying in front of everybody, oh, Mr. Mayor, you said you weren't going to come. And then he's like, well, we'll try to see if we have a place setting. And I'm looking around like, this man is saying this in front of me to everybody. And we're all walking to the ballroom. So I'll never forget, she sat at another table, I sat at another table. And when we were done, I was just like, how did you learn how to deal with this? And she was like, Alex, I know who I am. I know I earned my PhD. I know I went to Auburn. I know I do this. I know I do that. So it doesn't matter who I'm sitting in front of because I know. So those things are extremely important so that you can get through. And so I just spoke about my mentor, but my question also is, did any of you guys, and anybody can chime off first, did any faculty, staff, or mentor play an instrumental role in preparing or guiding you through the job search process and or that first day?
I can say for me personally, I know it's going to sound cliche. I do have a lot of mentors, but like as far as my professional development, my mother, like I still call her to this day. Like if I want to send an email, like, Mom, I'm about to send this email. Let me read it off to you real quick and tell me what you think about it. And she's like, okay, you can use this acronym or so on and so forth. And she's just been my sounding board for everything. As far as like, sometimes when you go through something, you'll think like, am I being overly emotional, or like, am I wrong for feeling this way? Is it okay that I'm lowering my value to be an intern going in, or is this something that everybody has to go through? She was the first person that told me, you have to pay your dues, Jania. Even though you have your degree and everything, you're not going to come in, you intern, you had this experience, but there are people that have come before you and they've made their sacrifices, put their due time in. So it's okay. And once you get your, foot in the door and everything, then you can go on. So I can just go on forever and talk forever about how my mom has been like, and she knows how to take the mom hat off and talk to me as a working woman in the field, what it takes, what you're going to have to deal with, how to deal with situations, how to respond, so on and so forth. So my mom has been overly influential in my professional development, and I wouldn't be where I am without her.
And so it's extremely important that you got to really limit the yes people around you. Jeremy and I have known each other for almost 20 years, and he definitely keeps it real with me. I definitely keep it real with him. So yeah, that's extremely important because you don't get growth out of somebody just telling you what you want to hear, because growth means that it's uncomfortable. So if you're uncomfortable, you know that you're going in the right direction. But Jeremy, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
Rest in peace to the late Dr. Graham. Dr. Graham, for those, you probably might not have met him, but he just would tell it like it is sometimes, and he wouldn't say always the nicest things, but it prepare you for like life after school when you're, around all those big wigs. But the fortunate thing about Dr. Graham is that he challenged us to kind of think outside of the box, not just on a local level or in the community, but more on an international level, and kind of how politics not only play a role in the university life, but more on a broader level. And that in turn helped me to at least be a little bit more resilient of what will be coming our way down the line. Again, having that thick skin and not taking it personal. But if any of you
Yeah.
Got a chance to go ahead, Alex. What were you about to say, Dr.
So
Meredith?
really, at the end of the day, he was helping us critical think. And Dr.
Absolutely.
left Dell State probably in about 2014 or 2013. It might have been earlier than that. But he was also in the College of Ag, and he is the one that started everything that you deal with when you talk about international or study abroad. So all the study abroad programs, he was the one that wrote the grants. We were the first cohort to go on a study abroad trip to Namibia, and from then everything is developed internationally. So Del State is always grateful to Dr. Graham, and he did just pass away. So yeah, we
Yes.
remember him.
And I also want to challenge these students or scholars to, if they ever get an opportunity to travel abroad, do it. It looks so good on your resume. You'll be surprised when you're in these interviews. They're like discussion topics away from the job description that you're actually applying for. You'll be surprised. That actually is what helped me get into graduate school. Not a GRE. Wait, was it GRE essay? Yeah, GRE. Not my letter of, because I couldn't write that really that good. But them experience probably was better than or as good as a 4.0 GPA, at least in my experience.
Mm-hmm. And Ms. King?
I just would really like to piggyback off that. I love that you said that. When I went on my study abroad, I was a part of the 1890 land grant scholarship, and we had a mandatory internship. And my agency and my liaison knew how important getting that worldly experience would be, and so they had worked out like I guess like a side deal for me so that I would be able to go on the study abroad. And I actually met like other USDA officials during my international experience. And I think it really does just as well open you up. And we really don't understand like a lot just as Americans and the privileges and so on and so forth. So it's just wonderful to gain that experience and see it firsthand. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And so, Ms. Purnell, what about you for a faculty staff mentor that might have prepared you, guided you? See.
I mean, okay, so students, if Dr. Meredith is not in your back pocket as a mentor, seek him out. Get on his schedule, ask can he pencil you in, whatever that needs to look like, get on it. Because he was that for me. Him and my graduate advisor both instilled that idea of not letting the imposter syndrome kind of take effect. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's kind of when you kind of let that self-doubt start creeping in when you're in a position or you're somewhere and you kind of start to feel like you don't belong or maybe this is not for you. Understand and know that it's always for you. And sometimes you have to create that space for you if it doesn't already exist. And so Dr. Meredith was that person for me, and I thank him 1,000 times over for all of his leadership, his wisdom. I still call now, like Jania does with her mom. I still call Dr. Meredith and I call him by his nickname, and I'm like, this is what's going on. What do you think about this? Am I making the right move? Whatever that looks like. But it's gotten me so far, and I'll never stop calling Dr. Meredith's phone.
Yeah.
I'm always going to be calling to get a little mentorship.
Well, not only that, but my mentor with the S, because I have many of them, because I believe that you lead the way that you were led. And so if I'm only being led by one mentor, I don't want just that one frame of mind, and I don't want to do things just like them. So I really stress mentors with the S. And so I try to still reach out to my mentees. And just like I told you before I went to Texas, I was like, we haven't talked for a while. And then we scheduled a time on Saturday. We talked for over an hour, caught up, because I'm giving forward what's given to me from my mentors. And so yeah, just please make sure that you are seeking out somebody that knows more than you do for where you want to go, because that's really what this is all about. So let's be real here, because there's good that comes with the bad. And so if you are on your job, on your first day, um, I'm trying to think. Well, I'm not gonna talk about my first day because I work here still. Not like it was bad or horrible, but there is good that comes with bad, as far as some things that can be devastating. A lot of times you don't know what to do, what not to do. And if you didn't have a bad experience, that's cool too. And if you didn't have a bad experience, how were you able to actually acclimate to the company culture as well as landscape socially. Many of you guys have mentioned that you didn't have people that looked like you, but you definitely still had to build a career, right? And I think that it's extremely important that you have a diverse population of people around you. So I don't just have people around me that look like me because I need to know different perspectives. So that's my question. Anything devastating that might have happened, whether it was your fault or not, and or if not, what were some of the things that you might have done or techniques that you use to acclimate to that company culture? Jeremy?
I would just say the first days on any job is just so overwhelming, just because you throw so much information at you. You're meeting so many people. Uh, it just comes with the nature of the business. Just uh, take good notes, be an active listener, and show the people who are welcoming you into their space or business or family or office that you're at least coachable. Uh, I will say that the mistakes that I've seen of some others that have come in, where they come in right through the back, acting as if they know it all, and that can turn heads. And like that, they say that first impression is the last impression. Uh, they're going to be jerks wherever you go, home, grocery store, Foot Locker. I mean, Dover Downs, wherever you go, they're going to be jerks everywhere. But just put your best foot forward. Show people that you are an active listener, and you're going to make mistakes. I mean, what would the world be without mistakes? It's just a matter of you showing people that you're willing and committed to learn from those mistakes. And then you also can learn from the mistakes of others. Uh, yeah, I'll shut up now. I can talk
Well,
about.
I was gonna also say, now that I think about it, I, my first day at because I came from a school district. So my first day at Delaware State University, actually I had an excellent first day because my boss, Dr. Berchevsky, had been my instructor. I worked in his office as a student worker. I had the opportunity to interface with him when I moved up and worked with the dean. And so yeah, my first day was excellent. Some of the things that I definitely, because and they were excellent because the whole college was open and welcoming to me, but also they knew me. So, but some of the things when I was putting this together and doing research on, as far as what you guys should do during your first day, definitely have yourself an elevator speech. You already have one anyway, but remember that you're going to be interfacing with everybody in the organization, not just that committee anymore that gave you the favorable markings to get you hired. Also, make sure that you probably still have on your interview face because you are now interviewing with new colleagues and you do need to be impressive because you are the new kid on the block. Definitely no phone. Just leave it in the car. Just leave it in the car. If you have to get people acclimated to saying, hey, if it's an emergency, you can email me. I'm at my desk if it is an emergency, or this is my phone number at the job, then that's fine. But you don't want to look like you are disinterested in any form or fashion. And like I said, also show as much interest as possible because, like Miss King said, you are going to have to pay your dues. The only way that you can pay your dues is if your employer is throwing you bones to do different projects to prove that you can pay your dues. If you're getting those opportunities earlier, they'll know what your leadership is about, they'll know what your work ethic is about, and they'll consistently give you opportunities and projects to not only prove that, but then to document why we're bumping him or her up. Rochelle? Oh, Jeremy?
I'll go next after Rochelle.
So, what question are you on?
Yeah, it was just about sorry, it was just about acclimated to the company culture, and if you had a good or bad day on your first day.
I can't honestly say that I've ever had a bad day. Um, on any of the jobs that I've started, but I'm also a glass half full kind of girl. So I'm always going to figure out a way to turn anything that could be seen as negative into some sort of positive. That's just kind of how I've always been, and it just has followed me into everything that I go forward in. I will say something that could have, I guess, been seen during the first week. Is just finding out once I got into the job that the things that were said to exist as far as for me to be successful and do the programming that I needed to do didn't really exist when I first got there during that first week. And so that kind of takes you back a little bit because you're kind of lining up your game plan once you find out that you got the job to go in, and you're kind of like, okay, these are the things that I would like to do since this exists. But when you get there and you find out it doesn't actually exist, and you've got to recreate that game plan, step back and kind of reset. So that's probably the most devastating thing that's happened.
Okay. Miss King, I didn't skip you, did I?
I had a devastating event. Actually, it just happened recently. It wasn't like really something with my first day. It was a fear that I had, but it didn't actually happen until recently. It's so crazy. We do fumigation. We treat incoming commodities, and it can be upwards of like over $1 million of grapes, blueberries. They're like over, I want to say, like hundreds of thousands of cases of fruit. So I was always scared, like, I don't want to have anything negative happen during these fumigations because that is, the customer's money. This is their money. This is fruit that will be, entering into the market. People will be eating. So I take my job very seriously. And basically, recently, that never happened. I was a little bit like, I'm glad it didn't happen when I first started because I was so nervous and I didn't have the confidence in myself. So just like you were saying, if you're where you're at, just know that you deserve to be there. There's a reason you're there. So always have that confidence. But I did have to cancel like a very large scale fumigation, and like everyone was like jumping down my throat. And I had to like stand my ground. I'm pretty sure they didn't respect me just because I am in a male dominated field. I'm very young. Everybody that I work with, for the most part, are like old enough to be my parents. So it's like they did not value my decision, but I had to cancel the fumigation because of regulations and so on and so forth. And I really had to find the strength as a young woman to say, like, this is the decision that I made. This is why, and I have to stand on it, regardless of how many people, like a host of individuals, were basically trying to force me to change the decision. So that was a fear that I had in the beginning, but it never actually came to fruition until recently. And that's it. That's all I really have to say.
I would say for me, and it still bothers me to this day, one thing when you do start your career, you're going to have skill sets that you are going to be expected to continue to learn on your own. So one thing that I'm really huge on is writing, because it's you before you. You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be something that's gonna that's gonna you'll be judged on it before you can actually have an intelligent conversation with somebody, right? And so I know that I used to have to like really reach out to all 27 school districts in the state of Delaware. And one time I was writing a really big email, which could have been, I think it was like to the principal, to the ag educators. And I ended up putting in their emails first. And when I put their emails in first, I started to write. And on accident, I clicked the send button on accident. And I was sitting there and it went through. So here I am, like, I guess it's kind of my introduction. I'm like, oh my gosh. So still to this day, I don't put in like anybody's email address until after I'm fully done and after I fully proofread what I've written. So that would definitely be one from me. Another thing that's really important is everybody always asks me a lot of times why I've been at Dell State for so long, and research shows that 75% of people leave their jobs because of their supervisors, right? So I was actually really, really blessed, and Dr. Barchesky is why I stayed for so many reasons because I learned so much from him, from training. He let me create. He was never down my throat. Anytime I needed resources, if he didn't have them, he would find them. He would advocate for me. And so what I'm getting at is that your supervisor can be one thing on an interview and when they're begging you to take a job versus working with them from day to day. So with that being said, one, did anybody have any situations like that to where uh, your supervisor might have changed when you were finally on the job and or how you might have dealt with that? And if not, what would be your advice to somebody that might have a supervisor that switches it up on how to cope or techniques or strategies?
I'll say, and this relates to that devastating experience a little bit, but um, in the interview process, it kind of seemed like that supervisor would be kind of like down your throat, a micromanager, inquisitive, always trying to be hands-on with what you were doing, but also be very supportive. And when I got in, it was the total opposite. Like, rarely saw him. No support. If I needed something, grant money, funding, whatever that looked like, it was always it couldn't be done as a response. And so that was total 360. Wasn't expecting that, but my optimism had me kind of create ways around it, other avenues to kind of make that work. And what I ended up getting was a supervisor who was always wanting to write about and brag about the work that I was doing because I had to make it happen on my own. I didn't have the support of him, but was always wanting to present about the work that I had done and how I made it happen and all of those things. And so that's something that can sometimes kind of get to you, but you also kind of stand in your own and you're able to kind of add that to your resume and speak about it for yourself and brag about it for yourself that these are the things that you made happen with absolutely no support, no funds, no anything.
Just to cut in just a second, one thing I do want to say as far as my advice would definitely to definitely have compassion for that supervisor, right? Because they might be supervising a number of people. They might be in a place to where they're bitter about what might have happened before you. And so I've always tried to, like you said, have that glass half full when it comes to how I might view my supervisor. And then also, um, when it comes to resiliency and your supervisor, a lot of times people might say, well, I'm not doing anything extra now because they act so and so type of way. But also be mindful that anything extra that you get is an opportunity to prove what you can do. And so when that happens, not only when you get the next job offer, uh, will they say, "Oh no, we're not going to let you go because you work extra hard," but also we all can tell when somebody's lying, right? So if we're in an interview and I'm now saying that I did these extra projects that I heard about, and I start asking you invasive questions, you're going to tell if somebody's lying or not. So I'm always big on that, is trying to be as authentic as possible because you don't want to be seen as anything other. What about you, Miss King?
I would say that my supervisor, based on my experience and what he had heard about me prior to meeting me, he was just like, I want you to be the senior officer and so on and so forth. And almost like not a supervisor, but somewhat like a leader of the office. However, when I got in my position, I don't feel like he propped me up as the senior officer, but he will hold me accountable like
Uh,
the senior officer. But it made it hard in the office for me because he treated me as an equal, but I'm held to a different standard. So I just had to take it upon myself to communicate with my colleagues and just be transparent, like granted, I'm not your senior officer, but this is how I'm being held accountable. So from that place, like out of respect for me and what I have to do and, what is required of me, I'm not asking this of you as a senior officer. I'm asking this of you as a colleague, and this is what I'm saying. So you kind of just have to sometimes, just as Miss Rochelle was saying, like roll with the punches essentially. And if there was a time where I was being held accountable for something that I did feel like was unfair, I did communicate that in a way that wasn't disrespectful, like, you didn't even tell me, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, thank you for letting me know that this is this and this and that, and going forward, I will make sure, blah, 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 so that it will be clear that, no, I did not do my job. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for letting me know, and from this point going forward, I will make sure A, B, C, and D. So, yeah, just being adaptable.
And so this is going to be the last question, so students can ask any questions that they might have. But just in a few words, what would be your final advice to students that are going to be going off to internships at this coming summer, as well as students that are actually graduating and that'll be going into some type of employment and or graduate school where you end up working for your advisor and their signature to get out? Because that's real. Rochelle?
The advice that I would give is something that I did from day one, is to implement a monthly reporting system for yourself and outline your goals in that position for the next 3 years. Even if you don't think that you're going to be there for 3 years, outline all the things that you want to achieve, and each month track those things, track what you achieved, track things that you went above and beyond and did, because at the end of the day, when you're building up your resume to apply for that next position, you're going to be able to brag about and talk about all the things that you did, all the contributions that you made, all the things that you weren't assigned to do but you did anyway, because they came to your plate. You'll be able to do those things.
Okay. Jeremy, what would be your final advice for a student that is going into an internship this summer or into full employment or to graduate school on their first day?
Wow, it's kind of hard to. I think everybody kind of covered it. I think that documentation is really critical, and I need to do a better job of that, even at this day and age. I just when in doubt, ask. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Uh, yeah, wow, they hit on everything else. I think that's the only thing that I might not have heard.
And King, your final advice?
I would never write an email when you're mad.
Yes.
Be flexible, and be as flexible as possible. Like, please don't be rigid. Like, this is my job description. This is what I'm supposed to do. Like, you have to be able to adapt and roll with the more you roll with the punches, the easier your career will be. And I would just say, look at every situation from a self-improvement. Like, even if it upsets you, whatever the case may be, what could I have done better? What did I learn from this situation? Even though this was bad, just like everyone is saying, I have gained this quality. I'm more understanding, whatever the case may be. Don't focus on what others have done that is wrong or whatever, because the only person that you can change and develop or whatever the case may be is yourself. So look at everything from self-improvement, not from a selfish place, but what can you learn? How did it make you better? So on and so forth.
And that's really important, is that whole self-awareness piece. And yeah, one thing I will say is, family and friends know what I do, but I also have to be a friend and, a brother and blah, 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 blah. So a lot of times when I get hit with stuff, I just deflect, because then they think I'm coming from a judgmental place instead of a practitioner place. And I say that because when I hear this phrase, I don't get paid for that. I just I just know that we don't work at the same work ethic or the same level. And so that's really something that you just don't want to say. Think it, but definitely don't say it, because it can be seen as being kind of like lazy. Students, does anybody have any questions from our guests? Ashley, you don't have no questions. Ayana, you about to make big decisions. No questions.
I'd say appreciate Dale State while you're there, because once you're gone, it's back to the real world.
That's so true. So true. All right, students. So I don't want to hold you. So let me put up the QR code for today?
Actually, I always do this. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I do feel like a lot of times when people ask me, do I have a question, I say no, and then I'm driving home or something like that, and I be like, dang, I should have asked A, B, C, and D. Like, I could have, this was a perfect time for me to, ask this question, and I forgot. So I just put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to me, if anyone's looking for a mentor, so on and so forth. I love outreach. I love giving back. That's my passion. So you guys can feel free to email me at any time.
And students, of course, this is the opportunity to enter the drawing for a $10 Wawa gift card. This is the QR code as well as the survey link. Please take a screenshot of it right now. Or if you would like to, the link as well as the screenshot. Azure, can you say out loud what your question was?
Hello. My question is, what do you think? Okay, I'm gonna say like this. I feel like I'm unprepared to go into the outside world, to go to graduate school, to kind of be an adult, I guess you could say. And so I'm curious to know, what should I be doing now and to prepare for being an adult, for preparing to be in graduate school, for preparing to build myself.
Azure, number one, be gentle to yourself because you're only a sophomore. You got me? So number one is being gentle to yourself because you're going to be you're going to be your own main critic. In your mind, you have a sense of a perfect Azure. Nobody can compare you to a perfect Azure. So that's a good thing for you. That gives you time to prepare yourself to who you want to be. But definitely make sure, and you're doing this, that you are taking on the different opportunities that are before you to get there. But also, you guys, I'm gonna let you answer.
I was gonna say also just understand you don't ever really prepare for adulting. Like you really just don't. I mean, it's something that you kind of like Jania and I were talking about, roll with the punches. It's just kind of a day by day thing that you have to get adjusted to. As far as preparing for grad school or any other opportunities, you can kind of start looking now and see what's out there. If you're doing internships, or if you're attending things like AFA that Dr. Meredith had me attending or stuff like that, you're able to be in roundtable discussions and panels and things where you can start to kind of mine through your interests and determine if graduate school is for you or not. Because I'm going to be honest, sometimes graduate school is not for everybody. Sometimes that's not the path that you need to take once you graduate. So I would just say take every opportunity you can to get acquainted with different things and find out what you're really interested in, what your passions are. But also, like Jania said, be adaptable and understand that your passions may not always manifest that way in the job that you go to.
I would just say definitely internship. Like that, real life experience is the best experience that you can get. Like real life experience is the best experience. It'll prepare you. You can ask people questions when you're an intern, like, how did you go about this and so on. It'll just immerse you in a real life, in the real world. It'll give you a little taste. I will also say, take advantage of what organizations on campus, and finding, not spreading yourself too thin, but yes, putting a little bit more on your plate, because when you're an adult, it's not just work. Like, you're going to have work-life balance. You need to know how to prioritize and time manage, because when you're in school, you have the freedom to just focus on school and just, you got free food, free housing, all this and that. So it gives you a different type of luxury that real life does not give you. So if you have the opportunity to join an organization and work as a treasurer or so on and so forth, then you'll have to balance schoolwork, being a treasurer, so on and so forth, if you want to pick up a second job, because time management and prioritizing, I feel like that is a big thing of being an adult. Do you go out tonight, or do you stay in and save that little bit of money so that you can, you know, pay a little bit more on your rent or whatever the case may be, like prioritizing it, managing your time. Maybe I'll just because you don't get paid, but you know you had this deadline. So are you going to work an extra 45 minutes at work so that you can make sure you meet this deadline and so on and so forth? It's just the small things like that, and transfer, like a lot of transferable skills that you can gain by immersing yourself in extracurricular activities.
And that was the other thing that I was actually going to say. And like Rochelle said, going to agriculture future of America is like those different types of things are important because, and this is why I tell every Dell State student that you're not competing against another Dell State student when you're going to grad school or when you're going into the employment or when you're applying to an internship. You're competing against every student that's at your level in the country and sometimes that are international. So pushing yourself prior means that you are attending to those things like manners, minorities and ag, natural resources and related sciences, national conference, where you have to interface with employers, where you have to interface with students that are just like you at other that are at other institutions, which there's over 75 now, to where you see what your competition is like. Yes.
And manners is on Friday. I have a flyer. I can send it to Alex so that he can send it to, or Dr. Meredith so that he can send it to all you all. I'm aware that a lot of DSU won't be able to go. I've reached out to a host of individuals. However, USDA will be presenting at Manners via virtually. And I have, if anyone is interested, I do have a flyer, or I'll send it to Dr. Meredith as well. If you guys want to email me, I can send it directly to you. It'll have all the Zoom links for all the opportunities where you can be able to plug into different rooms and get information.
Okay.
So I'll send that to you right now.
I just have, okay, my last question is, I know life is about like roller coasters and going up and down, but like what made you keep going up the hill when it felt like there was like the hill, that the top of the hill was so far away? Like what kept you guys pushing? Like, I want this that bad that I will go through every obstacle, I will go over every hurdle, I will go under every bridge to get to that point. Like what kept that drive?
I'll go last, but Jeremy, you got your hand up.
I mean, just, you know, coming from a rough background and community, my friends and family, the gangs, drugs, and violence. And so I had a no excuse type mentality so that I can, you know, make a difference in the lives of, you know, the students and the youth that are coming forth. So that was my inspiration, to be able to give back to my community and my family. And again, to just have kind of tough skin and just deal with it, you know. As long as you're alive, it's a blessing, is kind of how I look at it.
For me, it was one, my parents, they didn't play. And they are, you know, they were both college educated. So since I was little, that's all I heard was, oh yeah, you're going to college. And then also my dad was a Dell State alum, so I knew where I was going to college. So that's important. Of course, your parents. Also money. I was always on scholarship. So I remember going from Dell State to A&T and crying, talking about I'm going home. I want to go home. My mom telling me, you can always come home. And then that's when it hit me. I said, Mom, these people have invested money in me now. So I really got to be an adult and I just can't come home. And then also last will be goals. I'm very big at this age now on journaling, because that's where you're going to put down your goals and you can always come back to them when you get ready to fall out and say, hey, I'm remembering, this is why I'm here. I'm here because I want a better job. I'm here because I want a better life. I'm here because I know that I have to be here to meet my own personal potential so that I don't feel regretful for the rest of my life. So that's me. Parents, money, goals.
And for me, as a triple minority in my field, I'm doing it for all the little girls that look like me, talk like me, come from where I can relate to me, whatever the case may be. And I just feel like if I give up, you know what I'm saying, how, like, what standard is that setting for the people that come behind me, women, African Americans, young people. Like, these are all, groups that have different stereotypes on them, and I just want to break down every glass wall, every barrier that comes in my way, so that someone like you can come in behind me and do the same thing. And just for all the people that have poured into me and mentored me and given me their time that they'll never get back. I'm going to do it for them as well. And on top of that, give back to, just like they passed the baton down to me, I'm going to pass the baton down to the next person. That is something that drives me so much, like doing it for the people that have poured into me and doing it for the people that will come behind me. That's very important for me.
Rochelle?
And I'll just add real quick, like Jania said, I do it for my ancestors, and I think about all of those who didn't have this opportunity that I have today, because there's a long lineage of your ancestry that didn't have this opportunity. But also the other thing is, where else you gonna go? You already at the bottom. Backwards ain't an option. You can't go back to high school. You probably ain't gonna stay at mom and dad's house for the rest of your life. You probably aren't that fond of where you are right now, maybe as a college student, not having money in your pocket, things like that. So up is your only option. You just have to figure out how you're going to get there and how you're going to overcome those hurdles. And that's where everything that everyone shared today is going to come in handy.
Wow, I feel like I just had some good therapy. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna if nothing more, we're gonna adjourn. I thank you guys so much for coming and definitely, like I said, giving back. And you are more than appreciated. So if you guys could give them a hand or a little bit of a hand, and then yeah, like I said, students, the survey is open. It opened at 12 o'clock. It goes to 12, or it opened at 11:50, and I think it goes to 12:30. So please make sure that you fill out the survey and make sure that you input your information and your instructor's information so that I can send your attendance to them. All right, until next time, you guys have a good day.
Have a good day.
See you.